Welcome to the review that dripped blood. I'm your host, Jeffrey Woods, and today we'll be taking a closer look at the 1985 slasher Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, which was directed by Danny Steinmann and stars Melanie Kinnaman, John Shavar, Shavar Ross, Dick Wieand, and Richard Young. Now, I will be giving spoilers in this review because it would be difficult to review this movie otherwise. Also, with big franchises like this, most people have already seen these movies anyway. A New Beginning is the fifth installment of the Friday the 13th series and follows a now grown Tommy Jarvis. We learn that since the events of the final chapter, Tommy has been separated from his sister Trish and has been moved from one psychiatric institute to another. When we catch up with him, he's being relocated once again, this time to the Pinehurst Youth Development Center, a halfway house intended to prepare troubled teenagers to re-enter society. Pinehurst is run by Dr. Matthew Letter and his assistant Pam Roberts, and is inhabited by a very diverse group, including Jake, who's a very nervous young man with a distinct stutter, Robin, a young woman that appears to be suffering from PBA, which is a condition that causes uncontrollable crying and or laughter, Joey, an overweight and somewhat slow young man with an affinity for chocolate, Violet, a lover of the new wave genre, who can usually be found performing tasks around the facility while listening to music, Vic, a troubled young man with anger management issues, Eddie and Tina, the resident lovebirds, and last but not least, there's George and Reggie. George is an employee at the facility, and Reggie is his grandson, who likes to come and visit him and the residents at Pinehurst. Things take a turn for the worse pretty quickly when, the same day Tommy arrives at Pinehurst, Vic seemingly snaps out of the blue and viciously murders Joey. Vic is quickly apprehended and taken away by police, but it seems this random act of violence has awakened a greater evil that begins descending on those in and around the development center. So, what do I like about this movie? The story, direction, cinematography, and performances in this film are fantastic. To say I love all of the characters in this movie would be an understatement. A New Beginning opens with Corey Feldman reprising his role as the 12-year-old Tommy Jarvis in a flashback dream sequence. The filmmakers pulled a lot of strings to make this cameo happen, and I'm glad they did because it does a great job tying the films together. This eventually transitions to modern day, where we find a now grown Tommy Jarvis, played by John Shavar, being transported to the aforementioned Pinehurst facility. Shavar does a great job expanding upon the Jarvis character, who has clearly had it rough since we last saw him hacking away at the assumedly deceased remains of Jason Voorhees at the end of the final chapter. As I mentioned before, Tommy has been moved between various psychiatric facilities in the past 5 years, and Shavar does a wonderful job portraying this, having researched the role by spending several months volunteering at a state mental hospital. And Melanie Kinnaman does a beautiful job with her portrayal of our second protagonist, Pam Roberts, Dr. Letter's assistant at the halfway house. I find Pam's character a refreshing change in pace compared to the previous final girls. She's not just a teenager looking to have a good time. She's a professional, and she takes her role at the facility seriously. She genuinely cares for each and every one of the residents and employees, and that extends to George's grandson Reggie, who's played by an incredibly talented 13-year-old Shavar Ross. Despite not having much screen time, all of the residents at Pinehurst are unique and memorable. For example, let's take a look at Violet, portrayed by Tiffany Helm. This character only has a handful of lines and is primarily seen doing things in the background. However, she's written and portrayed in such a way that people automatically think of her when they think of this movie. Nearly everyone in this film feels like they're more than just cardboard cutouts for the killer to mow down. They all have their motives, backstories, and reasons for being there. Take the neighboring farmers, Ethel and her son Junior. We meet these two early on as they ride into Pinehurst shortly after the local sheriff catches 2 of its residents having sex on her property, and to say the least, Ethel's not too happy about it.
Hi, don't you look lovely today?
Poor shit. Now, Sheriff, you better hear me and hear me good. I want this loony bin closed down. Do you hear me, fella? Now, these kids ain't nothing but trouble. They don't respect others' property, and they're all crazy.
One of the biggest complaints people have about this film is that it's precisely what the title says, A New Beginning. Jason Voorhees and his mother are, in the words of Charles Dickens, dead to begin with. Much like the original film, it's a whodunit. Who killed these people and why? Unlike the original film, we're given several clues as to who the killer is.
What the hell's going on here?
You talking to me, Sheriff?
Huh?
It turns out to be Roy Burns, one of the paramedics at the beginning of the film, who turns out to be Joey's father. I love this character as much as I love Mrs. Voorhees, but you'll quickly learn that I have a soft spot for the avenging parent storyline. We learn early on that Joey's mother passed away during childbirth, and his father put him up for adoption. This tells me that Roy was actually a good parent because he didn't let his pride or ego get in the way of acknowledging that he wasn't cut out to raise a child by himself. that didn't stop him from quietly watching overjoyed from afar, and when Roy discovered that his son had been murdered, he snapped and, irrationally, started blaming others for his death, much like Mrs. Voorhees before him. Friday the 13th, A New Beginning is an underrated treasure with a great storyline. It's jam-packed with terrific visuals, special effects, imaginative kills, and has the perfect cast, which is why I'm giving it 13 damn enchiladas out of 13. Before I sign off, I would like to apologize for the long stretch between reviews. You see, I took some time off to publish my first children's horror novel called Erie, Ohio, Here Comes the Boogeyman, which is about a 12-year-old boy named Shelley who, with the help of a new friend, sets out to face his fear and revisit the past, unleashing a forgotten nightmare in the process. It's jam-packed with Easter eggs that any true horror fan would be sure to appreciate. If you enjoyed this review, please make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the Review That Drip Blood.